All right, and we are up. We are live in the newsroom, guys. It's Monday. Welcome. This is Mike Thomas.
What's up, everybody?
He's starting the show off with me today, so we're going to give you a nice little weather update from the digital news desk inside the newsroom. Happy Monday. It's 25th September. We're excited to be here, right?
Is there such a thing? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Yay.
You got to be happy about it.
Yes, I love not sleeping in, and I love coming to work every day.
He does get here pretty early.
Yeah.
I got to say, your energy is so up for the timing that you've been in.
I try.
Right. So we're going to look at some maps today. We're going to talk about sort of as these hurricanes kind of trickle off, right?
Thank you. Finally, at last, we're getting towards the end of it. We're not done. We still have A, half the season to go, but B, we have to get through Maria first, which is going to be affecting parts of the Outer Banks.
I heard that today in Carolina.
I'm trying to see if it's confirmed or not, but somebody just said that they've issued some mandatory evacuations down there, which...
In the Carolinas?
Yes.
Okay.
Which seems... I mean, how honest can we be here? To me, that seems extreme. I'll put it that way. But I'm trying to get confirmation on that. But let's talk about what the storm is doing.
Okay.
I mean, it's always better safe than sorry. But tropical storms, non-landfalling tropical storms, it's I don't know. I'm not sure why they went ahead and did the evacuation orders on those.
Okay, so that's specifically North Carolina.
And specifically Outer Banks of North Carolina.
And should we take a look at the map, or?
Yeah, why don't we go? Let's start here. Let's start with the details. Let's go with 3 and talk about exactly what's going on with the storm. There it is. You see that spin in the atmosphere. This is water vapor imagery because I want you to see all those clouds coming up, or see that white kind of stream coming up through South Carolina and heading in our direction. Not water, but clouds coming our way, or not rain, but clouds coming our way.
That's what the white is?
That's what the white is, and that's going to give us, not so much today, you will see some puffy clouds out there later on this afternoon, thanks to Maria here, but as we get into your daytime hours tomorrow, you'll see more and more clouds. So we're going to be mixing with more clouds, thanks to Maria here over the next couple of days. Shower risks are not huge. We're not going to get any wind here. From Maria, it'll just kind of be a lot like when Jose went by. We had some clouds. That's about it. The effects that will be felt will be right along the beaches. Outer Banks in North Carolina will get it the worst, that's for sure. But I want you to know this on this image. See that orange? The reason I put water vapor on this because we're looking at dry air here in the orange, and we're looking at the more moist stuff in the blue and in the purple there. That dry air off to the north here is an area of high pressure that's off the coastline. Some of that dry air is getting infused on the western flank of this storm. Where the worst of Maria is right now, where I've seen the highest winds, is off to the eastern flank, which will miss the Outer Banks. That's going to stay out to sea. They're going to get the western flank, and if you had to choose, if you're going to get hit by a storm, any storm, and you had to choose a area you want to be, you would want to be on the western flank of a storm that's coming north, because that tends to be where things are better than the eastern flank. Yes, and you can kind of see how it is. That all the heavy rain, the heavy thunderstorms has all kind of been sheared off to the east of the storm this morning, and off to the west you're getting less shower activity, but you're still getting some wind. And I was looking at gusts. I wasn't able to throw it up, but I was looking at gusts down there, and they were already gusting to 25, 30 around the Outer Banks this morning. They're going to get a lot of rough surf, beach erosion certainly possible, because even though you're not getting the worst of it, Maria's still pushing up a lot of water as she comes north.
Wow.
So beach erosion, high surf, riptides, big concerns. Not a big rainmaker. I'm not seeing any models putting down like flooding rains is a lot of time a concern with hurricanes, but I'm not seeing a lot of models putting down flooding rains or any sort of heavy rains. I mean, you'll get into a band or two on the Outer Banks, but nothing extreme. Like I've seen it maybe an inch or two for the most part, but the heavy stuff of 6-12 inches stays out to sea. So that's good news there. Again, it's just a wind alert and the beach erosion risk. And they do have warnings out. Why don't we go to CS2? I'll show you the warnings that they put out today. Tropical storm warnings were issued, and I'm going to go head over to my phone right here. Because
you have some updates.
Well, I want to see if I can
coming in.
Find...
yeah, I'm curious to see what and who is evacuating exactly.
Right. My guess is the Outer Banks. They're always kind of quick, and they like to go better safe than sorry down there. But well, I'll see if I can pull them up. I gotta find someone official. I can't do just
Right, so I'm seeing tropical storm warning, tropical storm watch.
Yes.
That's on the coast.
So warning means expect the conditions within the next 24 to 36 hours, and we do expect the worst of it to be Tuesday night and kind of through the day on Wednesday. It's not going to be pleasant. Maria's slow mover. She's like moving at 9. She miles an hour. That is. She's
like, wait a minute.
She's going pretty daggone slow here.
Okay.
So she'll take her time coming up. She's running into an area of high pressure off to the north eventually.
Yeah.
And why don't we go head over to CS1 so you can see the latest track. First off, she briefly strengthened, though she weakly strengthened. She was down to 75-mile-an-hour winds at the 8 o'clock update. She's now back to 80 as of the 11 o'clock update.
Wow.
So still expected to kind of fizzle. I mean, she'll jump up and back a little bit, but still expected to generally fizzle out over the next few days. By later or by tomorrow morning, still expected to be a hurricane winds of 75, but by Wednesday morning, expected to just be a tropical storm of 70. And remember, those core winds, those 70-mile-an-hour winds, are going to be right around the center. And center is not expected to make landfall, expected to stay out to sea. So you'll keep the that core of the 70-mile-an-hour winds. You'll keep that away from the shoreline, but you could at times on the coast gust to 60 or 70. Not sustained, but gust. There's a big difference there on the amount of damage it could potentially do.
Okay, so big question too here. It's been so hot this weekend, this week. It feels like summer. It's 90s. How does this all affect our weather now? Going into Virginia, D.C.?
Well, what it's going to do is it's put more moisture in the atmosphere. Water vapor was showing you again, all the clouds coming up. That is moisture in the atmosphere that's heading up in our direction. So even though we won't squeeze rain out of it, you're going to get that humid, sticky feeling. Not so much on the increase, but it'll feel a lot like yesterday was hot, humid, sticky.
It was.
Hottest day in the month, over a month. Since August 22nd.
That's insane.
92 the day. Sometimes we do that.
Well, that does happen in D.C., doesn't it?
Yeah, it happens from time to time. Those days are hot days are numbered. We'll put it that way.
Oh, good.
We got fall coming later this week.
I heard that this weekend.
Thursday,
Friday. More crisp.
And we got see how Maria there takes a super jog. She's kind of going north, and then she shoots off to the right. That's a cold front, strong cold front. Jet streams coming down this weekend. That's what's finally going to get Maria off our tail here and get her out to sea.
That's really interesting. So the cold really does shoot that storm away.
It's more the jet streams coming with the wind. So yeah, essentially yes, but it's the turning winds of the jet stream that are going to grab Maria, basically grab her and throw her out to sea.
That's a great analogy.
She's getting tossed and thrown. She really is. That's exactly what the jet stream is going to do.
That is amazing. Okay, so are there any? We know hurricane season goes through November. Are there any other ones in the wings?
As of right now, we have Lee way out. It's off radar view there. It is literally way out to sea.
Nothing on this.
No, you can't see it on there. It's so far out to sea. And
what's down in the Gulf? Something else?
Oh, that's just your class. First, all that red is actually dry air in the Gulf, which is good.
Okay.
The drier the air is down there, the less thunderstorm activity you're going to get. That purple you see kind of bubbling up at Florida is just their standard morning and afternoon thunderstorms. They still get those. It's still warm and sticky down there this time of year.
Wow.
Next area, though, according to our models to watch, will be the Gulf, but not until October.
So we are looking to other maybe things.
Yeah, but it's very typical during this time of year that storms tend to form out in the central Atlantic, like Irma, Jose, and Maria did during that August-September time period. Once we get into October, the focus for where the breeding grounds for these storms starts to shift from the Atlantic down into the Caribbean, specifically the Western Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, because that's where you still have the warmest waters and the calmest conditions left.
October's such a nice time of year, isn't it? It's my birthday.
It tends to be. Leaves are changing, fall.
It's happening now, so it's soon. Good. So this weekend we can expect more of that. Are you getting other new updates? Or
I still haven't looked up to see. I'm looking for evacuation.
Yeah, I'm so curious about that. That's really interesting.
They would have put it out on the National Weather Service site, I would assume.
We can bring it back in.
Hi guys.
Hey.
Sorry.
So we're live in the digital newsroom, guys. We're kind of chill, kind of quiet here on a Monday. Not a ton going on. Did you have a good weekend, Mike?
I did. Yeah,
hot and sweaty.
It was hot, sweaty,
it
but
was.
I spent most of it in the air conditioning, so it's hard for me to complain.
That's really good. But again, we'll go back to this map. Actually, this one's really interesting. So we're looking into the evacuations now in Carolina, and that's them.
Yeah, I'm going to see. Well, that's at least the warnings and watches. I have heard via an enemy news station.
Oh no, that will not be named.
No, we shall not name them. Not local. National.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Not local. We're #1 local here. Never forget that. But
sure.
I was over there watching a national channel that weather folks often watch, and they said it. So I'm trying to confirm it because I had not seen that come across the wire yet. My guess is maybe it's voluntary evacuations.
So once all this weather stuff passes, hurricane season goes, I mean, you have less of sort of a crazed immediate, morning. You're kind of just doing 7-day, what to expect.
Right.
This is like a crazy time for you.
Hey, thank you.
Crazy time for
Look
Tucker.
who it is.
All right, we got the confirmation.
All right,
from
looks
Tucker,
like,
so
hold
we're
on,
good.
here. Good.
And
Good.
scene.
Looks like mandatory evacuations issued for visitors on Hatteras Island.
Okay.
That's from Dare County Emergency Management. So that's a legitimate site.
Is that probably an island off of here?
I believe
southern?
that's extreme southern.
We'd have to look at the map.
Yeah, you want to throw Google Maps up on one of our secret computers
I'll
that
find
we
it.
have in the background here? And see.
Yeah.
Hatteras Island it'd be south though. I'm pretty sure. That's at least one. Let's see what else they put out.
What, Hatteras?
Yeah, has a man. I see
Let's
Hatteras.
get it. There it is.
That's it. That's the only one I see.
Oh, there it is.
out.
Let's zoom out. This is
So
where
is
it
that-
is. Off,
Okay,
way off.
So it's
There's
like,
Wilmington
but
here.
it's one of the. It's probably the farthest point out. So it's yeah.
So
there it
super
is.
far point out. Yeah, there's Nag's Head.
So it's probably the farthest, almost the farthest eastward extent of the islands. There.
Yeah, if anybody's familiar with the area, let us know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many islands off.
I mean, I will say this, and I don't want to underplay anything. Listen to your evacuation orders, but I think that this area of the world has seen much worse conditions than that.
Can you speak to sort of how some of the islands are doing? Puerto Rico. I mean, we've been seeing so many celebrities offer their.
Yeah, I
you
mean,
see J-Lo's Insta.
I have seen. Yeah, I saw J-Lo down there. You know, she's good for her for going down there.
Yeah.
She's helping out.
I mean, to her
she's
people,
raising
it's-
money.
yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, absolutely incredible. Island still. We've been chatting with Tucker's friend who's down there.
Oh, yeah.
Cell service still down all over the place.
But he was able to call
But
in?
he
Or-
said he had like a 2-minute period where he found some cell service.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
He sent us a couple messages and
Okay.
then boom, he went black again. But
Wow. So they are
it's
still dealing with that.
Tons of damage. I know the death total was up over 30 already, which is horrible and unfortunate and I don't think that's not just Puerto Rico. That's all across. I think that's Dominican, Puerto Rico, and across the islands there. It's going to be a long cleanup. I mean,
Yeah.
they said months without power, and they still have without power. They unfortunately had, we were talking about this earlier, record highs down there yesterday, so it was 94 degrees, I think. Nobody has AC, obviously.
That is
'cause
so terrible.
Power's out. So, yeah, it's a rough go. The good news is that they're getting a break from the hurricane department. And,
And now they get the heat and no power.
Fingers crossed so that hurricanes stay away. But, yeah, it's rough. I'm sure they're doing cooling centers and stuff like that.
With generators and stuff?
I know Tucker's buddy said he's got a generator going down there, but then you got to think, those generators don't run off nothing.
I was gonna say.
So I'm sure eventually, if this keeps up, you're going to start having fuel shortages with generators eating up the fuel.
Like, you think about what we do, we kind of take it for granted, but we get super hot, humid summers in the 90s. We rely on AC big time. We did this weekend.
Yeah.
And we forget, I don't know, we don't go through what they go through down there. We're not going to be hit like an island.
And specifically, our generation is super spoiled because we grew up with AC. My grandparents still don't have AC just because they were like, we never needed it.
Yeah, they were just not, they knew what it was like without it.
They're used to it.
So interesting.
We're just spoiled, but the people down there obviously because it doesn't get that cool at night. That's the thing in Puerto Rico. You're surrounded by water that's 85 degrees, so you're not really going to cool the air that much at night. You're going to have those evenings in the mid 70s and afternoon. Typically, they don't get that warm. But just the way the pattern was set yesterday, they were able to spike up into the 90s.
So another hot week this week in D.C. We'll kind of be watching for some of the effects from the hurricane, but
it's mostly
rain
it's
this
clouds.
week.
It's mostly clouds. If you live southern Maryland, Eastern Shore, maybe we get a little bit of shower activity in the forecast. But I think here in D.C. we keep it dry. We just get a little cloudy tomorrow from time to time. Some will poke through, but more clouds mixing in. And then same deal on Wednesday.
Okay.
Front throws Maria out to sea Thursday. We're sunny, bright.
Shoots it out,
and then
like we saw.
Yes, boom.
Boom.
Boom, there it goes. Out to sea, not going to be a problem. And it's a good thing the front's coming through because she'd keep kind of jogging north here if it wasn't for the front. And then we got problems here.
Really? And then up in north. Okay.
Right, but good news that will not happen. That front's coming down, kicking her out to sea, and then we get nice, cool, and pleasant. You're waiting to turn off the AC, open the windows, wait till this weekend. Really wait till Friday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Is windows.
Look gorgeous. Windows open weather. I should have put the 7-day up. But
it's okay. We know it's hot.
We got to save that for tomorrow. We got to talk about something tomorrow. No.
Weather
We'll show
guy,
that.
Mike, you're the best. Thanks for
all
coming
right.
over.
Good luck with the other news. I know it's been a fun news weekend.
It's a fun news weekend. All right, Mike's going to go chill. He's done with his day.
Yes, I'm done with.
We'll see him again this week.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care. Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to shoot right over to, you can roll your way out. We're going to shoot right over down to Arkansas. Actually, really, really cool event going on right now with former President Bill Clinton. He's returning to his home state to speak at an event that marks the 60th anniversary of the desegregation of Little Rock Central High School. So he's speaking at this event. Really cool. We have it coming in live right now. We're going to go down there.
Very painful and difficult to tell. But it's essential that we tell them and that we do it in a way that keeps them in the forefront of the American conscience. That we translate the lessons and the sacrifices of the past into the dialogue of the present and the future. The events that occurred here 60 years ago truly transformed America into a better country. They contributed so importantly to the national civil rights movement. It really forced our nation to look in the mirror and face its own image. And while the conflict between the federal and the state government occurred out in public, the real battle was here, in this building, in these classrooms, weighing on the shoulders of 9 young American students who were literally serving as ambassadors of change and moral courage. When Little Rock Central High School National Historic Site was established in 1998 by the U.S. Congress and President Bill Clinton, thank you, sir. That effort that so many of you in here played a part of assured that the events that transpired here will never fade into history. President Clinton's signature to that legislation also allowed the National Park Service proudly to work with you to be a perpetual guardian of the transformative historical events that occurred here. And though no one will fully understand what the Little Rock Nine experienced here, because this site is a national park unit, and because of so many of your efforts and support, over 1 million Americans already have, and millions of Americans in the future will have the opportunity to better understand the extreme hardships they endured, become educated as to how the courage and bravery of these incredible Americans changed the course of history in this country forever. And there's no question that this site has become more and more relevant to our nation as time has gone on, not just to the American people, but to the American dialogue. It has continually allowed us to provoke reflections in history, share lessons of our past, and has created a better awareness about our nation's struggles toward equality. As your steward and partner of this great place and this important story, we remain more committed than ever at helping tell the events here accurately and in perpetuity for the benefit, education, and inspiration of both current and future generations. Every one of you in this room, in one way or another, exemplifies the perseverance of the American spirit, but no group more so than these pioneers of civil rights that we're commemorating here today. To those extraordinary pioneers and your families, we thank you for your sacrifices. Know that the courage and your actions will be remembered here forever, that you're an absolute inspiration to our country. To you and to all of you, the National Park Service is very proud to be your partner here. Thank you.
"60 years ago, the office of the governor of Arkansas worked to keep the Little Rock Nine out of the school. Times have certainly changed. In 1987, 1997, and 2007, Governors Bill Clinton, Mike Huckabee, and Mike Beebe embraced the Little Rock Nine. Just as his immediate predecessors have honored the Little Rock Nine, today it is my pleasure to introduce the current governor to welcome them, Governor Asa Hutchinson.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, President Clinton, Mayor Stodola, and those of the Little Rock Nine with us today. Dr. Melba Patillo Beals, Elizabeth Eckford, Ernest Green, Gloria Ray Kalmark, Carlotta Walls Lanier, Dr. Terrence Roberts, Minnie Jean Brown Trickey, and Thelma Mothershed Ware. I wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed our visit before the ceremony today. We are gathered here today so that our state and nation will never forget the courage, fortitude, and persistence you showed the world 60 years ago. The events of that fall day changed the path of a nation. Yes, the bravery of youth inspired hope for all whose dreams had been crushed by an unfair system, a system that failed to change with deliberate speed. Your quiet determination and your stubborn refusal to abandon your dreams not only forced action, but set an example that will last into the ages. Whether you witnessed the events in person, or like me, you studied and reflected.
All right, guys, we're going to pull out of that event, and actually I'm going to bring it to you later to make sure that we catch Bill Clinton, who's speaking down there. But I'm joined by Ronica Cleary. So good to have her in the newsroom this morning.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And usually you run out to the White House, you're covering politics for the day, which you will be later.
Yes.
But we have to talk about the hot topics of the day, and that being Trump sort of pitted against the NFL today.
Absolutely.
And yesterday.
Yes.
Sunday was a day of amazing NFL games. Obviously, it was a big Sunday football day, and a lot of stuff happened.
A lot of stuff happened.
You worked on
a lot
Sunday.
of tweets happened.
Yeah. So what was it like in here?
And I think it really started before Sunday, because when we came in Sunday morning, I think maybe the president tweeted something on maybe Saturday night, and it really started at the rally on Friday, where he said that he called them SOBs if they kneel, and said they should be fired. So I think that that really caused the conversation to get big, if you will. And then we expected on Saturday night, I think he tweeted about it some more, and then by Sunday we just knew that everyone would be looking at the games to see, would more people kneel? Would fewer people kneel? Would they not come out on the field? Because it changed everything when the president started to weigh in, and it starting at that rally on Friday in Alabama, and then the tweets. There were so many tweets about it. So that's kind of the progression of things. So when we came in yesterday, we knew we had to talk about it. We had a former Redskins player who works on the NFL, our Redskins game time show that we do every Sunday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Right. We had him join us to kind of start off the show. And, you know, one of the things that I asked him, and I was really curious about his thoughts on it, was, you know, he's now weighing in on this really political, heated conversation, this very controversial topic that has a lot of people divided. And I said, you know, do you just, now he's retired now, but do you just really want to talk about the game? Do you feel uncomfortable that now you're talking about something controversial? And, you know, he felt that he needed to respond and be a part of the conversation now, you know. So I don't know if it was something that he would have been a leader on, if you will. Like, you could argue Colin Kaepernick really started the conversation. So maybe he wouldn't have done that. But I think now it's happening. So now I think these athletes are more comfortable, as a general rule. Obviously, I'm not speaking for all of them, but I think they are more comfortable getting into this debate, taking a stand, taking a side, even though you could argue, you know, years ago, it was just really just the game, right? And they would just go to the game, and it was kind of a way to escape from everything. And now it's really changing. And I think that's true with everything. I mean, sometimes I'll joke with people at Christmas time or the holiday time, you know, like, what do you say, Christmas or the holidays, with your Starbucks cup, you know, is it, right? You know, and so everything is political now. Everything, I remember when that all broke out. So it's, you know, your football is political, your coffee is political, everything is political. And I do think, though, as much as some people may not like it, I do think the leaders in the industry, the athletes in the industry, or celebrities, they are more comfortable being political now than maybe they were before, because they just feel like the issues are so hot and controversial that they kind of have to weigh in. So I thought that was really interesting to hear his thoughts on that, because I thought, do you want to do this? Like, we thought he might not want to come on our show. That's a really good question because we thought, he maybe doesn't want to get in it, you know, but he, you know, felt that he needed to. So I just thought that was really interesting.
And going on that point, I'm glad you asked him that question. That's really neat. I wonder if it's easier for him now being a former player.
Sure,
right?
that
It's
does
gotta
change
be.
it. But we've got the Redskins statement. I mean, these
current-
players and the NFL as a whole, they are supporting the players and standing with them. So I think that maybe it was less comfortable. A lot of people talked about, well, is the NFL going to fire these players? What's going to happen if they all start to kneel? And many people pointed to the fact that, well, we know the answer. Colin Kaepernick didn't get picked up, right? I mean, we know how the NFL responded. But I think now that it's become so big and there are so many people, now the NFL appears to be changing its tune a little bit and sort of standing beside the players a little bit more than I think Colin Kaepernick probably felt when he didn't get drafted. Now, I don't know much about football, so some people say maybe it's because he shouldn't get drafted. I don't know. I'm not even
People are
going
on
into
both
those
sides
waters,
of it. Yeah.
but about why he didn't get it. But it does feel different in the last few days. It seems like the NFL is a little more standing by the players, taking their side, letting them take this political stance.
It does seem like that. And I will say
and
this.
you can see in this Redskins statement, they're letting them. I mean, it's a long statement.
Yeah, you guys can read it on your screen. We're going to keep it up there, but they tweeted this out. But it is interesting to see the players react, the coaches, some of the owners. Even, I will say this, I watched a good amount of football on Sunday. I saw some of the things. Obviously, so many things happened. So many games, people standing in solidarity, people not coming out for the anthem, people kneeling for the anthem, people holding hands. It was just everything. It was almost too much to wrap my head around, especially because I was just there to enjoy some football on Sunday. But even, I will say this just as a little thing, because I'm a Patriots fan, Robert Kraft even put out a statement that was sort of like, hey, I was actually disappointed. He's a Trump supporter, an old-time friend. Actually, I don't know if I would say supporter. I'm not quite sure, but I know they're old-time friends. And he said I was disappointed in his statement on Friday.
The president's
statement in that speech. So that was really interesting to see even some of these old friends who are long-standing.
Not like what your friends say.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's true, and he can come out against it and, you know, still maybe, I don't know if he's saying he's still friends with him or not. But,
right, I'll have to look into that. It's interesting to see these owners. And then we have, of course, the barrage of tweets from the president.
A lot of tweets.
A lot of them. We have a couple up.
Was it over after the games on Sunday? But then this morning, he brought it back into the spotlight with a handful of tweets. And this one really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Where he says the issue of kneeling has nothing to do with race, because a lot of people say that it does have to do with race. And he says it's about respect for our country flag and national anthem. The NFL must respect this. So one of the things that I brought over today, and I wanted to just read it because I don't want to mess it up. One of the things we've been talking about on our morning show today is about Josh Norman, a Redskins cornerback. He spoke at length. I get confused with
I know, I'm like doing the monitors.
He spoke at length he's the Redskins quarterback. He spoke at length after the game last night about how he felt about all this. But the president didn't tweet this until this morning, but because we know that this is a part of where the debate falls, I do want to read you. He addressed this idea about whether or not kneeling is about the flag, whether or not it's about our country, whether or not it's about the national anthem. He says, it is not, I'm going to read you his quote. This is from Josh Norman, Redskins cornerback. It is not about the flag. It is not. It's not about anything like that. It is about black and white. It's about what we are being faced with right now, and that's being teared down from in the White House, behind the podium, behind the presidency of the United States of America. That can't go down. And he goes on to say that's just disrespectful. That's appalling. If he calls someone an SOB, how can you call someone that? That's their right to do, you know what I mean? So, and that's referring to the comments that I mentioned earlier from Friday night,
Friday night
at that Alabama rally. So I just thought it was interesting. I mean, it was before the president tweeted this, but obviously this is where a lot of people are debating, where does the issue lie? What does kneeling represent? What does kneeling mean to you during the national anthem? Is it offensive to the flag, like the president is tweeting here, the flag, the country, and the national anthem? Or like Josh Norman is saying, it's something totally different, and he's saying it's not about the flag. So I think that's
that's notable. Would it be right to say then that we're dealing with multiple issues here? We're not even And
now I think people too. I was talking with Kinesia, our producer, about it. I think now people are kneeling for more than just the issues that Colin Kaepernick, who is the name that comes to mind as probably the person who, I don't know if he did this first, but certainly a name that we discussed quite a bit, having done this. The issues that he wanted to highlight are still there, But I think there are now a whole host of other issues that people are talking about. I think some people are kneeling in protest of the president.
Definitely.
They have. It has nothing to do with these other issues for some people, and then some people it continues to be about the issues of race in America, and whatever it was that was upsetting them when they first knelt. And so yes, it is a much bigger issue now. It is much more complicated, and I'm not sure that the president is going to back down. I certainly don't expect that.
I know.
And then
really interesting. This is another tweet I just pulled up. He was saying that a small percentage of the total actually kneeled.
These are fans. He's talking
many
about...
people were booing them who kneeled, and so just more detail from his Twitter account, of course.
Yeah.
And like you said, it is a mix of issues. And I think I remember even on that Friday night personally when I saw that clip and everyone was talking about it and it got tweeted out. I was talking to Brody, our sports guy, and just stuff, and he was like, we were just kind of agreeing it's going to make things possibly worse for him. Personally, this will be a whole different thing.
But I think it could also make things worse for the NFL. You will see people boycott the NFL over what we saw yesterday's game. So, and I think that's a good time to come to the poll that I did.
Yeah, you did a poll. This was really
polls,
neat.
We do just get 100 votes or something. This one has 850 votes. And it shows you when you say, this is going to be bad for the president. Well, this could also be very bad for the NFL. People are clearly divided. I know it's not scientific, but it is hundreds of people. And there are tons of comments on it as well, asking, the president said they should be fired. He was saying you should say you're fired. He was using his signature line if they kneel during the national anthem. Well, 43% of the people, and again, it's not scientific, but it just gives you a taste, a feel, a sample. 43% of people said yes. Those people may not be eager to watch the NFL now that so many more NFL players are taking a knee or not coming out. I mean, so this is not just, quote, bad for the president. This is bringing to light and bringing to a head a very controversial issue that I think a lot of people have opinions on and thoughts about and do take a side. I don't think a lot of people are down the middle. And this is now bringing it to a head. More people, like I said when I spoke with that retired football player, more athletes and celebrities as well are comfortable weighing in, comfortable sharing their opinion, and now people are not as eager or perhaps more eager to enjoy their sports or enjoy their celebrities or movies based on whether or not that athlete or celebrity has the political view that they have. So I think that this poll just gives you a taste. It is for the fact that people are really divided on this. And there are a lot of people who agree with what these NFL players are doing, and there are a lot of people who agree with what the president is saying.
It is divided. So, it's a pretty close poll, you would say. I think.
Yeah, and so I just think that's worth kind of remembering and pointing out.
I was going to say, so on that same line, what can we expect today? You're off to the White House, as you normally are, for the briefing.
So there is a briefing today. There aren't briefings every day, actually. And so the days when the president is in D.C., and actually before we get to that, I should, because he's in D.C., I want to read you one more thing from Josh Norman today. This is, again,
former Redskins?
The Redskins cornerback. No, this is the current player. He came out and said, in those comments, I read you what he said, that he feels it's not about the flag, but he also came out and said, I am telling you right now, this man, meaning the president, is not welcome in Washington, D.C. He is not. I hope he's not going to be around when I see him. He's not welcome. I can say that to your face. He's not welcome. You're picking on the wrong people. So I think that is something that that is pretty telling that people are saying you're not welcome in D.C. Now, President Trump said that I think a baseball team was not welcome because they were wavering about whether or not to visit. And then Mayor Bowser came out and said they are welcome in D.C. So it's really interesting. Again, is this issue bigger than what it started? Yes. Totally. Now it's getting into this, it is.
Yep. On top of even that, I remember that with Mayor Bowser. And then also Steph Curry, Golden State Warriors, the whole retraction of his invite because they won. And he was like, and now there's that whole meme battle like, no, I disinvited you. No, I didn't want to come anyway. And it's just, you're right. It has become almost in a lot of sports now. It's sports and the president. It's really interesting.
So, yes, so the briefing today, though, so there is a briefing today, and you just made me think of that because he's in D.C. So when he's not in D.C., there's no briefing. There tends not to be, because his staff would be usually traveling with him, and then it sort of changes the way they do availability. So he's in D.C., and it made me think of those remarks of saying he's not welcome in D.C. But I think there'll be two main topics. I think this will certainly be a topic of conversation, but then there's also, healthcare is the big topic that's out today. Republicans are trying to pass sort of a last-ditch effort to repeal and replace one final time before the 30th. That deadline is important because if they can do it before the 30th, they can do it with a simple majority. They can pass the bill with a simple majority in the Senate, which is just, you just need 50 votes, and then the vice president can break the tie. After the 30th, it would go to where they would need 60 votes, and they think that would be much more difficult. So while all this very, like you said, hot topic is going on, because it is a hot topic and it's important, it's kind of what everyone's talking about today, there's also a really serious debate that may very well affect your day-to-day life, your health care, that's also happening in Washington. That may not get as much attention today because people are going to be talking about the NFL, but people kind of thought that it wouldn't pass because Senator John McCain of Arizona came out and said he would vote against it.
Now what is
Ted Cruz came out saying that he's also not sure about it, but they have 5 days or however many days till the 30th. I mean,
yeah, 5.
A lot of people are saying it's over, but 5 days, a lot could happen in Washington. So maybe the Republicans will find a way to find a common ground. I don't know. I think there's too many subgroups within the Republican Party and too many different views on what the right solution is to solving the problems of the Affordable Care Act within just the Republican Party. So if I were a gambling person, I would probably say I don't think they're going to get the votes. But 5 days is an eternity. So that would be the other big topic I think will come up today in the briefing. And then I could have forgotten. I mean, there's so much going on in the world.
There really is.
There's a lot happening, but I would think those would get a lot of the attention.
So probably Sarah Sanders is prepping for all those questions. She knows the NFL. She's going to have statements ready. And
she will have statements ready, I'm sure. And she's very good at sticking to the statement. She doesn't get herself in arguably like trouble as much as Sean Spicer did. Right. Because she really, for the most part, I mean, obviously she'll go off the cuff, but I think she comes in ready. She kind of knows what she wants to talk about, has her statements and thoughts ready, and she really sticks to that. So the briefings are shorter, but a lot of times I would argue you're not getting as much out of the briefings with Sarah as we did with Sean, because Sean was willing to go anywhere. And so in some ways you're like, well, keep it shorter. We're not going to get more out of you because you're so good at kind of staying close to the vest. So that's at 2 o'clock. So I'll be there.
Really interesting. What's Trump's schedule today? Do we know anything about?
You know, I don't have it in front of me. I could certainly bring it up if you want.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious if we were. I didn't see anything on our live events, but we'll definitely be watching this topic for sure. And what time is the briefing? At 1?
It's at 2 o'clock.
Is it 2?
Yes.
So we may or may not bring that to you live. We might bring it to you on our Facebook page, guys, if there's a camera there, which sometimes there isn't.
It's on camera too.
It is on camera.
They've pretty much all been on camera since
they've been a little later.
Sarah took over.
Okay.
And she does do them a little later. I got an updated White House press briefing, and of course, here we go. Updated daily guidance. It came out around 10. So, oh my gosh.
Ronica, our person for all things White House, as always.
I think I might need glasses. Oh my gosh, I've just discovered this live on your show. This looks really small to me. Okay.
We're live,
So
guys.
the president gets his daily intelligence briefing, which is on the schedule every day at 10. 12:30, he's having lunch with the vice president. At 3 p.m., the president makes an announcement on the Trump administration's commitment to equipping the American workforce for jobs of the future. That's in the Oval Office. So when it's in the Oval Office, they don't let all of the reporters in. They do a White House press pool, and that's just a small group that get the footage, and then they share it with all of the White House correspondents. It's actually pretty nice how all of the reporters work together because they cannot accommodate every reporter who wants to be in these places. And then 6:30, this is pretty vague. I don't know much about this. It just says the president has dinner with grassroots leaders. So I'm sure more about that will come out. But again, and then 2 p.m., the on-camera briefing with Sarah Sanders. All the headlines really about this NFL story, and so it's taking away from some of these other things. So we'll have to see what happens.
Isn't it amazing? Just in general, a day in the life of the president, there are so many topics that he's just having luncheons about and doing, and then you hone in on one thing. It's just really interesting.
To try to pick the right thing. That's the hardest thing each day, to pick the thing and then things will change throughout the day, and then we throw all our work away and find some.
It's kind of a little behind the scenes cool info about how it works to cover politics for local news, which is interesting, right?
It is really interesting and so much fun.
Yeah.
Good. I want to show you this, Molly. This is not newsworthy.
Happy fall, guys.
So I know there's a lot of hate in our newsroom. There's a lot of anti-pumpkin and pumpkin hate, which is upsetting. So I don't know if anyone from Fox 5 is watching this right now, or if they.
Maybe.
I know they watch.
Hey, Kyle. I know you're on.
This is maple. Does that count?
I was gonna say pumpkin.
Are we mad at maple
it's a
too?
Maple leaf.
Are we mad at pumpkin and maple, or just pumpkin? Now I bought 2 boxes. I bought 2 boxes of pumpkin Cheerios at the supermarket yesterday, and I am unapologetic about it.
For you or for your child?
For me. But I also saw these, and it kind of made me laugh because I was like, I wonder if there's hate on the maple.
That's so funny. I want to try that.
It's actually really good. It's basically a bowl of candy. It's
like
it's
sweet.
sweet. It's
It
very
is
sweet.
I like real pumpkin stuff, but I need the weather to be a little more crisp.
It is not cold enough.
It's not crisp.
It's definitely not cold enough.
I love fall though. We're so excited to usher in.
This was fun.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. We're so happy to have
I'm
Ronica
gonna
on.
come on more,
She'll be
I
on more,
promise.
and I really hope to have like a cool behind-the-scenes White House tour with you again. We tried that
Right.
months ago. We had a little bit of a technical issue, but I want to do that again because, like I said, she's often right down there.
I would love to take you through and just show you
us
how
the
not
stuff.
glamorous it is.
And just the behind the scenes, right? Because no one, we never get to step foot there.
And says, "Oh my gosh, this is so small," and "Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I mean, it's crazy." And I don't want to diminish how exciting it is to be there by saying it's not glamorous, but it's really not that glamorous.
Yeah.
And there's not enough seats in the room,
Right.
and you're standing and you're squished and uncomfortable. But I would love to take you guys inside and show you behind the scenes, and every day is different based on the news day too. Like some days it is a little more comfortable because it's just not as busy of a news day, so you can grab a seat or you can be a little more comfortable. But the days when it is a huge news day or something like that, I mean, it is packed in there. So
and like as the holidays come up in the fall, are you privy to like interesting White House events like that, like Christmas stuff and like Thanksgiving? I don't know. I just know there's stuff coming up that
I did
the White
see
House
pictures last year of like a White House correspondent's little Christmas party that they had that was, I think, in the basement of where the briefing room is.
Neat.
So I
wonder
don't.
what's in there.
I don't know. I wasn't covering the White House this time last year. We just started it with the new administration, adding it. I always covered politics here, but we were covering a lot more with the campaigns, and the candidates were trotting all over. So we were trying our best to cover that in the way that we could, so our viewers could make their vote with the most information that they could. And so I'll find out.
You will see.
I'll let you know. You know there'll be pictures on Instagram.
We'll get pictures. I pull a lot of her Instas and tweets on the show,
good.
so
well, I'll be
as
sure
much
to
as we
post more
can.
today. I'll try to show you guys more inside. And
Awesomeness. I know people always do this.
microphone.
Well, you guys can see your handle right below
sorry.
on the screen, so we'll see your tweets and
Yeah,
we'll see your stuff.
Keep me in touch.
And your polls, which are awesome.
Thank you. They're
really
so
fun to
fun.
kind of talk about this day. We'll have Barnard, I think, if I can grab him on a little later, because he was able to get some like man on the street interviews with people this morning about the NFL thing to see what they thought. And I think it was pretty mixed, just like your poll exhibited. So.
All right.
Pretty interesting. All right.
Bye,
thanks,
guys.
Ronica.
Thanks for having me on, Molly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will see you guys later. Now I have to go.
Yeah, she's going to go to the White House.
Do a job. Yeah. Oh, no, that's fun, though. I'm not going to
Yeah, you love it. All right, we're still inside the digital newsroom, guys. You can see the view of our newsroom behind me. Kind of quiet today. Happy Monday. We're going to go back to this event in Arkansas because I think it's really interesting. Bill Clinton is speaking at, like I mentioned before, this 60th anniversary of a desegregation of a high school down in his home state. And I think he's hopefully coming up next because there have been a lot of speakers, but we're going to check in there and keep you up to date with anything that's live and breaking, guys, here on Fox 5 Live. Thanks for joining.
To the organizers of all of this, Mr. President, Governor, distinguished guests, Skip Gates, to the audience, Central High School supporters and lovers, to my family, my wife Phyllis, my daughters Jessica and Mackenzie, my sister Triopia, my nephews Todd and Todd Washington and Scott Green. I think none of us 60 years ago, as we arrived in the back of Army Jeeps, knew that we would be standing here today. Making history is not something we aspired to do. We wanted the best education our parents' taxes afforded. We wanted what the Constitution said, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and I saw education as part of that right. Now, after September 4th, when we were denied admittance, I did what my parents' family taught me. I dug in my heels. You know, the Bible says, weeping endures for a night, and joy cometh in the morning. 250 days was a long night. The recent cover of a local magazine said progress with a question mark. But I'd like to remove that question mark and instead say progress ellipsis. Progress is not a single action, a moment. It is the small, mundane, everyday action. Some days with international focus, other days with no more fanfare than a small thank you. Progress is like water to torture on the unrelenting enemy of stagnancy and complacency. Initially, it feels like nothing more than tiny droplets of water, and after a while, it beats away at hate and vile rhetoric, not as a rushing water, but still as seemingly small droplets. Progress has to continue because there is no finish line. Emmett Till turns to Heather Hare in Charlottesville protesting Nazis. Muhammad Ali turns to Colin Kaepernick taking a knee for injustice. And the Little Rock Nine turns to the Charleston Nine, paying the ultimate sacrifice for peacefully assembling in a church for Bible study in the edifices of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. This scares many because of its proud heritage. You know, we need young lawyers ready to follow Wiley Branton Sr. and Thurgood Marshall. We need community activists and church leaders like Daisy and L.C. Bates to continue to engage and challenge our public officials. We need parents and caregivers who are actively engaged in the education of their children, like Lothair Scott Green and all the parents of the Nine. And I want our children to know that they have a continued role in this marathon to progress. Be prepared to take up the mantle of the Little Rock Nine, Malala Yousafzai, and realize that education is the key to upward mobility. I may have been the first to graduate, but I didn't cross at this stage by myself. I crossed that stage for my 8 compatriots over here. Thelma Mothershed Ware, Minnie Jean Brown, Tricky, Jefferson Thomas, Carlotta Walls Lanier, Gloria Ray Carlsmark, Melba Patillo Bills, and Terrence Roberts. They still had graduation on the horizon, and regardless of where they graduated from school, the victory was still theirs. And as I crossed that stage and accepted that diploma, for the next 800, 8,000, 8 million that will follow, I've learned that in the 60 years since Central, there are different paths in life one can take. There are worn paths, there are faint paths, there are even random paths that don't follow anything. Know that these paths were worn in not by one person, not by 9 people, but generations of people following scattered footprints left by someone else. But also know that the errant footprints follow no path at all may intrigue someone else to follow a path not yet forged. No, it won't be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight. But as my sister has told me, but as many follow, a path will wear into a permanent reminder of someone else's initial steps. To the Tigers, black and gold, God bless each of you.
Gloria Ray Carmark.
Never thought I would stand here. I can't really say I feel comfortable being here, but I am here and it feels pretty good. You know, people ask us, and especially me, a lot about the first day at Central High School. But my daughter reminded me the other day of another thing that she knew about me. She suggested that I talk to you today about the last day of school, because nobody ever asks about that. You know what kind of a year we had. You've got the general idea of it. But on the last day of school, they handed out the yearbooks. And I remember getting my yearbook. And that presented another situation for me, quite different from the others. I had my book, and I knew that people signed each other's books. But there I was, this now 15-year-old little girl. And who was going to sign my book? Who would I dare go up to and ask to sign my book? So I stood there for a while with my book open. And then Becky, the girl I had secretly exchanged notes with in one class, she came up and signed my book. And I felt a bit of a release. At least I had one signature in my book. But then another girl came and signed my book. She wrote, "In a different age, we could have been friends." Thank you.
Carlotta Walls Lanier.
Thank you and good morning. President Clinton, to the Governor of Arkansas, Hutchinson, and the Mayor of Little Rock, and all the other distinguished guests here on this stage. Thank you for being here, actually. I was asked about a year and a half ago by the city manager, what would we like for the 60th anniversary? Give them some ideas. They already had ideas about what was going to take place. And I want to be very honest and clear with you. I said to him, I would like to have dinner in the White House with President Hillary Clinton. But this is the second best, being here. 1957, on the day we commemorate here this weekend, September 25th, we went as teenagers, anxious and worried that we had missed over 2 weeks of school. We didn't know what the day would hold or what would happen in the year ahead. We didn't realize the role that Governor Farbus would play, sometimes behind the scene in our high school experience. 1987, 30 years later, all of us came back for the first time that we had seen each other as a group. It was Governor Clinton who welcomed us into the governor's mansion. Hillary Clinton, who had been under the weather, came down to the kitchen, and we talked into the early hours of the morning with our other friend who was mayor of Little Rock, Lottie Shackelford. 1997, 40 years later, Governor Clinton was now President Clinton, and the welcome the Little Rock Nine had was overwhelming and kind and gracious. It was well-meaning and heartfelt. It was time, it seemed, to set things aright. 2007, 50 years later, All of us are still together as the Little Rock Nine. We had grown older, but we all had made it. We had children, grandchildren, and each of us successful in our own ways in the worlds in which we lived, and it was give back time. 10 years after the 40th anniversary, we had set up the Little Rock Nine Foundation, one that would support young high school students as they made their next step toward higher education. We were happy to see each other, happy to call one another friend, happy to have shared important moments in history with one another, and with a nation that honored us. We had a place in the modern civil rights movement, something we never sought, but was granted to us, that Congressional Gold Medal prior to that. 2017, 60 years later, we return to Little Rock, to Central High, as senior citizens. One of us is missing now, our friend Jefferson Thomas, because it's right to speak his name aloud. He was the one with the engaging sense of humor, and we miss him in these days. Only my mother, Juanita Walls, remains, and she is here with my family, my husband, my 2 children, and my grandchildren, 4 generations, along with my siblings, Tina Walls and Luana Terry. Thank you for that. And today we have number 45, who behind the scenes and through his Twitter accounts, we become as we were 60 years ago. Anxious and worried and concerned about what lies ahead, this weekend and in the year ahead. We know these things, though. As a human race, we are strong people. And in the words of the old Negro spiritual, we have come too far to turn back now. No, that's okay. It's okay. Just one more thing. Just one more thing. Just one more thing. We all like to say, have a good day, but I say to you, have a day that matters.
Dr. Terrence Roberts.
In the name of full disclosure, it's important that you know I come here not to celebrate. Not that I don't want to celebrate, but that time has not yet come. You see, for me, the balloons are in the closet. The confetti is stored away. The noisemakers, in every variety you can imagine, are waiting to make their noise. It's been a 75-year wait for me. For most of those 75 years, I have been aware, consciously, of the need for real change. But there's something you should know about my vision. For those of you who have urged me to celebrate progress, I say, look at it from my perspective. First, for what I want is for none of this ever to have happened. That said, I have a new vision that shows me what could possibly be. But it can't happen. I can't do it alone. We all have to engage in this war against the forces that are determined to shore up and maintain the status quo. That's not feasible. How can we do that? You can decide to choose to live a life that's different than the life you've thus far chosen to live. I don't make the a priori assumption that everyone here shares my vision, but I do make the assumption that you are willing to investigate the options as you become aware of them. And why aren't you aware of them? By choice. You have chosen. You see, willful ignorance is one of the most deadly sins that we face. If you are willing to move away from that position and take a more balanced position, I think I have a chance to see what I need to see. How can it happen? For those of you in the audience who are professed Christians, I speak now directly to you. One, you have a Bible. Some of you may not know that the Bible is simply an acronym, basic instruction before leaving Earth. Since we don't know the exact date of our exit from this place, it is imperative that you read the instructions now. And as you do, you will find in there admonitions to treat your brother and your sister as you would treat yourself. I can't imagine, given the history of this country, that those of you who are professed Christians would want that to continue. I was told, and I mentioned this in the interfaith service the other night, I was told by a minister in this very town that I had no business being at Central. I don't know if he was reading the same Bible that I had. I went back home to look for the passage to see where he got that information. I have yet to find it. My understanding is that we Christians care enough to confront. When you care enough to confront, you get in other people's faces. It's not about being combative. It is about loving care. You see, if you have a child, and that child has a penchant for playing near the off-ramp, you will confront that child. You will take measures. You will use every instrument possible to maintain the safety and well-being of that child. Think about it that way. Treat me as your child. Help us all to move away from this nefarious status quo into the brighter light of understanding where we truly see each other as God sees us all. Thank you.
Minnie Jean Brown Trickey.
Well, thank you, everyone. You know, I really like to be on stage with really illustrious people. Greetings. Thanks to the city and all the people. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everyone. Now, I have 1/3 of my children here, Isaiah and Spirit. I have my sister. I found her when she spoke out, as she usually does. Oh, there's nothing like the Brown sisters. So, I consider this experience, the 60th commemoration, as a pilgrimage. And I looked up the definition, which says a pilgrimage is a journey or search of moral or spiritual significance, typically a journey to a shrine or other location of importance. And here I am, and here we are. So we come here, I think, to remind ourselves and the world that the work is not complete until a beloved community is achieved. La la. Okay. So when I'm standing in a place of such significance and remember that I was fired in the heat of Little Rock Central High School, there's no forgetting. So I and the rest of us in many different ways will continue our activism. We come here to catalyze, to stimulate the conversation that needs to happen here, there, and every place else. Now, I'm going to tell you what happened. I did accuse number 40 whatever of suffering from, it's my phrase, hashtag, profound intentional ignorance. And I said it on television, so I expect my tweet a little later today. So, astrophysicists, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I love that. Hashtag profound intentional ignorance, okay. Dr. Tyson says we're really close to the unraveling of an informed democracy. We have to think about that. We're in a place of education. The theme of the Little Rock Central High School National Historic Site is it's about education. And it always is about education. It was then and ever shall be about education. So I'm hoping, and we're not stupid, the Little Rock Nine. We know what's going on in this town, as Marvin Gaye said. Okay, who knows about Marvin Gaye? Okay.
It has been many years since I entered this historical building, and I did so today with a sense of anticipation and hope for the future of those educated here and other facilities throughout the state. The year I spent here was filled with uncertainty, mostly related to safety. Fortunately, other than verbal and certainly psychological issues, I experienced no physical harm. The years since have seen my continued growth and experience in education as a teacher and counselor. I gained a lot from my students and hope the same can be said in return. My hope is that Arkansas will continue to experience the spread of integration and embrace people of different ethnicities and beliefs. I would also like to add that the proliferation of charter schools has given us a cause for the concern for the future of conventional public education. We do not want these schools to become centers for those students who perform below educational standards. We must continue to be involved and vigilant for the education of all of our children for whom our futures depend. Thank you for your time and attention.
Let us say thank you again to each of the Little Rock Nine. To introduce our keynote speaker, it is my pleasure and honor to bring to the podium the woman who knows every inch of this school and who owns it. Nancy Rousseau has been principal of Little Rock Central High School since the summer of 2002. As principal, she thinks about Central High School each day. I suspect that every day she is in Little Rock, whether school is in session or not, she spends time at the school or at school-related function. Nancy is an ambassador for Little Rock Central High School, its students, its alumni, and the entire city of Little Rock. She is one of a few people who has worked on the 40th anniversary, 50th anniversary, and now the 60th anniversary commemorations. Join me in welcoming Principal Nancy Rousseau.
Thank you, kids. How in the world do you introduce Bill Clinton to a room full of people who not only know who he is, but actually know him? Although I find it hard to believe as I thought about it that the majority of these students were born after he left the White House. Sorry. It's true. As a student in Hot Springs, Bill Clinton saw the Little Rock Nine bravely face the mobs while watching them on television. Probably black and white television. Definitely. He has credited that experience with expanding his worldview. In 1987, as was mentioned, the then Little Rock Mayor Lottie Shackelford welcomed all nine to Little Rock. Bill Clinton, as governor, gave the nine the tour of the governor's mansion. As president in 97, he not only spoke at the ceremony, but he, along with Governor Huckabee and then Mayor Jim Daley, opened the doors, as they did, majestic doors of Central High School for the Little Rock Nine to enter. 10 years ago, well, that went quickly, he again spoke, this time as our former president. During the 50th anniversary events, he also hosted the Little Rock Nine for a viewing of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was on exhibit at the time at the Clinton Presidential Center. As previously mentioned, President Clinton signed the legislation which made Little Rock Central High School a National Historic Site. This is a partnership about which we are so proud and enjoy every single day as people from all over the world walk our halls along with our students to see our historic school. As president, he presented each of the Little Rock Nine with the Congressional Medal of Honor in a ceremony at the White House. He also spoke at the memorial service for Daisy Bates. The list of his connections to this school and to the Little Rock Nine goes on and on and on. In fact, in the summer of 2016, he and some of the members of the Little Rock Nine joined me and a few hundred other people in the basement of Central High School during a tornado warning. The tornado warning turned out to be a major weather event with part of our roof being torn away and 2 classrooms being destroyed. As Central High's very proud principal, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege to say thank you. Thank you for all you have done for this school. Your life and career are the embodiment of the 4 statues which adorn the front of our school and have looked out upon 90 years of history. Ambition, personality, opportunity, and preparation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, and my children behind me, it gives me great honor to say, would you help me and please welcome to the podium the 42nd President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Madam Principal, for your leadership of, in some ways, the most important high school in the United States. Thank you, Superintendent. Thanks to the Park Service for taking good care of us. Thank you, Dr. Jordan, for demonstrating just by the way you talk how dumb it was to deny so many African Americans the opportunity of a decent education for so long. You're an inspiration. I thank all of you who came. Happy birthday, Annie Abrams. Governor Tucker, thank you. Secretary Slater, thank you for all you did for our country. I want to thank you, whoever did the program, for letting Darren and Joy speak, for they are the true heirs of what was done here 60 years ago. And from one of them, I benefit every single day. I want to thank Melba and Elizabeth and Ernie and Gloria and Terrence and Minijine and Thelma and two who are not here, Jeff and Daisy Bates. We miss them both. God, they were wonderful, weren't they? And I want to thank my old friend who was introduced as Dr. Henry Louis Gates. But if you want to laugh about the aging process, which trust me is not for sissies, when I saw him coming up here with his crutches, I thought, how cute. Why? Because all of his friends call him Skip. And then he took the pink elephant out of the closet so the rest of us could talk. This is also the 40th anniversary this year of my first speech as a public official, and it's got a lot in common with today. I spoke at the Rotary Club installation banquet in Pine Bluff. There were 500 people there. There were 25 speakers. By the time I got up to speak, half the people were hungry again. And the guy who introduced me had run the campaign for me down there, and he was more nervous than I was. I was a young attorney general, and he got up and said, you know, we could stop here and have had a very good evening. Now, what he meant was, oh, the best is yet to come, but what it sounded like was the truth. Please, I want to go home. But I thank them all. I thank this group for letting me be a part of their lives, for sharing their true feelings, for giving us each in their own way the true meaning of what we're here about. I wanted to come here and reminisce I was here for the 20th anniversary. Not even all of them were. And Jesse Jackson and I were on this stage. And he told the students at Little Rock Central High, because America was facing a big drug epidemic then too, like this awful opioid epidemic today, and heroin and fentanyl and the whole deal, that they should open their brains and not their veins. I say that because he too is aging and not in the best shape today. But we should never forget that long before it was popular, he called on people to develop their minds and do their work so they could claim their legitimate place in America. Skip Gates in his Utter Life has a TV show. Have you all ever seen it? You seen his show? And he traces our lineage. Shows that Governor Hutchinson may be related to John Brown or King George III or God only knows who. But it's important, I want to start there. What does all that they said amount to? What was the pink elephant in the closet that Skip dug out? By tracing people's genetic lineage, you find out almost no black people are all black. And almost zero African Americans, and maybe there's not a single one, whose entire lineage comes from people from sub-Saharan Africa. And almost no white people are all white either. And unless all your ancestors are from sub-Saharan Africa, between 3 and 4% of your human genome is from the Neanderthals. That's the part that's been rearing its ugly head lately. Now, look, you know, ever since I've been out of office, I've been doing these crazy things. I have this endlessly amended bucket list, and one of the things I wanted to do was understand genomics, particle physics, and astrophysics, but I really wanted genomics because I spent $3 billion of your tax money to sequence the human genome. And now you can do it for about $100, and it's given us more than $300 billion in economic activity. So it's the best investment of your tax money ever made, and a good reminder that you get a big return when you invest in modernizing infrastructure and science and technology as well. So, anyway, so I keep reading all these articles. One day I read that, but you know, our human ancestors first rose up on the East African savanna between 150 and 200,000 years ago, and it took them 90 to 100,000 years to get all the way to the north of Africa and then into the Middle East and into Europe. And for 40,000 years after that, we co-inhabited Europe with the Neanderthals. It turns out we liked each other better than we knew. But they were bigger than us. They were stronger than we are. Their brains were just as big, but for reasons no one fully knows, as far as we can determine, they never wrote a book or a poem or spoke to each other in traditional ways. But it appears that they didn't survive the last era of really big mammals, and we did, perhaps because we could run faster, but in all probability because we could communicate and we could cooperate. The great biologist E.O. Wilson says that the greatest cooperators are the most likely to survive, and the best species that have ever lived for cooperation were ants, termites, bees, and people. My library, all the people at Presidential Center make fun of me. We just had that great exhibit where you could see all my cooperators. But it's true, when we had the tsunami in South Asia, cooperative instinctive patterns of animals saved a bunch of them when people were killed. In South America, there are termites that only drill air-conditioned housing. I'm going to tell you what that's got to do with all this. I want you to think. 5 holes in their living quarters. They go in and out of one. The rest is all air conditioning. When it's going to rain, they know it, and they stay out so they don't drown. Bees pollinate 96% of all the food human beings consume. You should really worry that a lot of the bees are dying now because of environmental and chemical conditions beyond their control. The combined weights of ants on Earth exceeds the combined weight of people on Earth. The most touching non-human picture I saw from the awful devastation of Harvey in the Gulf Coast and in Houston was this gushing water in what had been a city street, and on it this massive blob of fire ants. Must have been 100,000 or more of them, and those on the bottom sacrificed themselves so that they could glue themselves together and they would all survive by floating away to freedom. But we can do more of that. I wanted to stand up and say a lot of simple bromides about that and make everybody feel good and tell them I love them and sit down. But then we had all this stuff happening that other people have talked about. So I wanted to say, you did 60 years, take a victory lap, put on your dancing shoes, have a good time. But instead I have to say, you got to put on your marching boots and lead us again. This is not a partisan issue. Abraham Lincoln gave his life to hold the Union together and to pass the 13th Amendment ending slavery everywhere. Ulysses Grant, a greatly misunderstood and underrated figure in our history, not just as a general but as a president, gave us the 15th Amendment, the right to vote, which he said was the most important thing that had happened since the founding of the United States of America. And last time I was here on this stage was with George W. Bush. Because our Leadership Scholars Program takes turn doing our graduation where his library is and where mine is. But we get 60 people every year, equally divided by party, representative of race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, you name it. They come together and they go to his father's library, the LBJ library, his and ours here, and study some decision at each place together. And they talk about it together. And these are people who readily admit that in the world we live in, they would never have met each other had it not been for this program. And they study these decisions and then they discuss how they ought to be made when they agree on the end. And lo and behold, they find out there really is something to the most important study behind the science that made Skip Gates' program so fascinating, which is that we're all 99.5% the same genomically. Every non-age-related difference you can see in this audience is rooted in 0.5% of your genome. We are now living in a world where we're going back and revisiting the original questions of this country and the original things that tore this country apart in the civil rights movement, which is basically whether all that matters is what's in that 0.5%. It's bad enough that every single one of us, for reasons of personal vanity, spend 99.5% of our time thinking about the 0.5% of ourselves that are different, don't we? Wish I were a little taller. If I had LeBron James's body, I'd have gone a different line of work. If I could have played a saxophone like John Coltrane, I'd have gone on a different line of work. You got it. We all spend all this time. Bad enough we do that. Now, we're back to square one. That's all that matters. Back to tribalism. And it's sweeping the world. It is entirely understandable, and I think was entirely predictable. Anybody who didn't see it coming wasn't out there in 2014 and 2013 like I was. But when you have people who feel that they've been passed by economically, socially, culturally, and politically, and they're fed a steady diet of resentment, and they don't ever meet anybody different from them or talk to anybody, then that's the core of it. Then all you need is a little leaving. People get careless about whether they vote at midterm. People read this, that, the other thing. Pretty soon, somebody else says, well, you can have your resentment. I want my resentment. My resentment's more authentic than your resentment. Let's fight about whose resentment is the most authentic. And pretty soon, somebody's trying to keep you from voting, or just erasing you from the polls with some app, not subject to review. Pretty soon, another country thinks, these people are so messed up, so torn up and upset, so full of their resentment, I'll mess with their heads. Isn't the internet wonderful? The answer is yes and no. The answer to everything is yes and no. That's why democracy requires diversity and debate. There are almost no unmixed blessings. I don't think that they ever wanted to go to Little Rock Central High School and get a good education and have a good life so that one day they could be in control of everybody that didn't look like them and squeeze them by the neck until they couldn't breathe. I think they wanted to be part of America, part of a world, to be full the way God meant us all to be. You can't do that if all you think about is that 0.5% difference. You can't do that if you ignore the plain teaching of every faith that nobody is all wise and right all the time. And every religion says, in one way or the other, after the love of God, the most important thing is to love your neighbor. So all the clever people who want to divide it say, yeah, but what's the definition of neighbor? They do not remember the parable of the Good Samaritan, and that the Samaritan was not generally thought to be the neighbor of the Israelites. There's still 200,000 of them today in the Middle East, and they're endangered like every other small religion there by people who, in the name of their perfect knowledge of the will of God, want to squash them because it makes them feel good to hurt somebody else. The Torah says he who turns aside a stranger might as well turn away from the Most High God. The Quran says Allah put different people on the earth, not that they might despise one another, but that they might come to know one another and learn from one another. The Dhammapada of the Buddha says that you are not really alive unless you can feel the arrow piercing another person's body as if it were entering your own. What is the matter with us? I heard that rally down in Alabama, and I thought about, oh my God, I got to go come look at the Little Rock Nine. And they're down there talking in ways that you hadn't heard since George Corley Wallace was governor of Alabama. And again, they forgot the history. Wallace was the first guy who thought, oh, I can get white folks all over America to vote just like they do here. I just got to get them torn up and upset enough. Got to fill them with resentment. Got to stop people thinking. They've forgotten I knew George Wallace in the last years of his life. And we served as governors. I remember when he apologized to the people of Alabama for fanning the flames of racial hatred and discrimination and asked the African Americans of Alabama to forgive him and promised to serve them all. I remember when his bullet-ridden, paralyzed body was so painful it took him 2 hours to get dressed every day, and he got up 2 hours early for me one day to go to a governor's meeting to protest new rules against aid for disabled coal miners and others who were being thrown off disability. I remember there was a truck driver with a 9th grade education who lost his arm in an accident who was cut off of disability because they said he could work as a telephone receptionist. George Wallace got up out of bed to vote against that. He became reconciled to the fact that we all had a place in America's design. We don't want to go back there, folks. We don't want to get into, we don't want to get into my resentment's more authentic than yours. We want to look at Skip Gates' program on television and find out all the funny things about our ancestors we never dreamed about and say, wow, how dumb were any of us ever to deny any possibility to any American. I want these young people to have the brightest future ever offered to any generation. Part of it, you know, is whether we can keep creating jobs in the face of robotics and artificial intelligence and all these changes that are going to happen. Part of it is, can we really ever bring again the same economic opportunities to small town and rural America that they once had? I think the answer to both is yes, but it won't happen by feeding our resentments, especially our resentment against immigrants. Because we, native-born Americans, I just remember 3 things. The birth rate among native-born Americans is now only at replacement level. That is, we're not growing. The median age of a workforce determines, along with the education level of the people and the investment level and growth, the prosperity of a country. Having lost it, I can tell you, youth matters. When it comes, it matters in a lot of ways, but it really does matter in economic potential. Fact number 2, the crime rate among immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, is 1/2 the crime rate of the native born. Fact number 3, the small business formation rate, however, is twice that of the native born. We should be worrying about our real problems and how we can solve them together. That would honor the Little Rock Nine and the lives they have lived and the work they have done. Do we have problems with health care? Yes. Do we need to protect our border from people that would use it to come in and hurt us? Of course. Are the national security questions we face simple? No. But I'll tell you one thing, we're not going to get from here to there by making people mad. We're going to get from here to there by providing what they got at Little Rock Central High. 90 years ago, when the school opened, it was somebody designated it the most beautiful school building in America. 20 years after that, its football team was designated the best high school football team in America, not in the state. When I was the governor, this one school regularly won 25 or 30% of all the merit scholarships in the state. But had to work like crazy to win the Latin prize over one persistent competitor from Deer, Arkansas, population 300. Because there was one woman who loved that town and had always loved the history of Rome and taught, and the Deer, Arkansas had a Latin banquet then, Governor, and the Game and Fish Commission would give one permit every year to kill a bear. And the condition, and it was by lottery, and the condition of getting the bear permit was that you had to give half the meat to deer because the Romans ate bear meat, and this lady had a cookbook from Roman times, and I went to Deer, Arkansas to eat it. I thought it was made up, so I went to the Latin banquet. And the high school gym was covered in cheese. They were the only people who could compete with Little Rock Central High. Why am I telling you this? Because that's the real meaning of their lives. All they wanted to do was to live their lives and be a part of America. Not a part of America, not in control of America, but a part of America. That's what this ought to be about. John Lewis said on the floor of the Congress the other day that he was inspired as a young man of 17 by them, and that he had to find a way to get in the wave. So we all got to get in the wave. This country is by far the best positioned country in the world for the 21st century. There's no point in our getting in our own way any longer. But we have to reject resentment and anger in favor of answers. We have to reject polarization and demonization in favor of mutual respect. Last night we opened the Mandela exhibit at the library, and I never cease to be amazed at the disciplined respect Mandela showed his political adversaries. He put the people who put him in prison 27 years in his government, and told his own people who criticized him, they said, hey, you just got 62% of the vote against 18 opponents. Are you out of your mind putting them in? He said, yeah, but we just voted for the first time in 300 years. Can we run the banks or the military or anything all by ourselves? But it's a question anyone could ask in any place in America. Can people just like you and only like you, who only know what you know and think like you think, meet any of the challenges we face all by ourselves? The answer is always going to be no. Diverse groups make better decisions than lone geniuses and like-minded people, and people that are so siloed they can't bear to think about something that they are predisposed not to believe. So we face an emotional question, a question of the heart, and a question of the mind today. Do you really believe in the legacy of the Little Rock Nine? Are you really grateful? If you're a parent or a grandparent, can't you imagine how their parents felt the first day they set out? The lasting memory I have of the 40th reunion, believe it or not, is not that I was president. I was glad that the most important thing I had to do was to hold the door open so that the world could see the reality of what its symbolic message was. Because I was afraid I couldn't give a talk because Hillary and I had just taken Chelsea to college. And we literally had to be run out of the room, the dorm room. She was our only child. It was a deal. And I realized that when I got here, that their parents let them come here. Terrified. Because of the promise that it offered. That I had just taken for granted. For my daughter. That's what I remember. Are we really going to let more than 200 years of our struggle to get over the idea that our differences are more important than our common humanity just be blown away? You really want to go back to what it was like before World War II or the 20s or whatever? I lived through the 50s and 60s. I'm proud of what was done, but it wasn't pretty. And a lot of people lost their lives. So I ask you to say to them, we love you. You taught us that in economics and social policy and in politics, addition is better than subtraction, and multiplication is better than division. We could have learned it in grade school, but if we didn't learn it from them in Central High, we will never learn it. So, celebrate today. Feel like wise, older people. Put on your dancing shoes tonight. But tomorrow, just like John Lewis, you made us get in the wave. We need to get in the wave again. So tomorrow, we need you again. Put on your marching boots, and we'll get in the wave. God bless you.
Guys, if you're just joining us here today, that is former President, of course, Bill Clinton, former Arkansas governor, also speaking at Little Rock Central High School. It's the 60th anniversary of their desegregation, and it's quite notable, too, here that former President Clinton also hosted the 9 black students who were part of that desegregation movement at a time, and he gathered them together at the governor's mansion in the late 80s, and then he hosted also, he was the keynote speaker at the 40th and 50th anniversaries in commemoration of the school's desegregation. So here he is again, and it was interesting to see him go from sort of understated to a little bit more impassioned in his speech, and of course bring up some of the current events of the day, somewhat subtly, I think, talking about some of the times that we're going through and sort of the racial unrest and tension that the country is going through right now. Again, this is the 60th anniversary of this desegregation. So we'll stay on this for a little bit longer and then go over to Capitol Hill, where there is currently a Senate event going on. There's some senators are discussing what's going to be later discussed in the Senate Finance Committee, the Graham-Cassidy bill that is coming to a head this week, as we were discussing earlier. So we're going to go over there in a second to Capitol Hill.
And Smith College provided a variety of types of support for the Little Rock Nine.
Hey.
He's not going to renew it anymore at that moment. It could be in place, but it's not a standalone. We have to resolve the other aspects. We have to continue to be able to build a coalition around this and say this is a solution that we believe can actually pass and get into law. The president was very outspoken. When I walked him through the details of it, he said that's exactly the kind of solution that I think would work and would be a good option to be able to accomplish. So obviously, he's not seen the bill text, because when we talked about it 3 weeks ago, we were still finalizing a lot of the bill text. I was talking through the concepts of it. But wanted to let him know this is where we are and the direction that we want to go. But his statement was very clear as well. Is the same as mine. It's the same as Senator Tillis. This has to be a part of a larger package. It can't be a standalone.
Senator, Senator, thanks. Just a question about your colleagues on the House side. The last time Congress was dealing with immigration, it sort of was in their court. And have you had any conversations with anybody about possibly co-sponsoring the bill? Or
well, we have, and I should have mentioned earlier that Congressman Curbelo and I have been talking for probably about a year. They had the RAC Act, and that was instructive into some of the drafting of this bill. And I also think that the Speaker putting together the working group is also a very positive sign. That's another reason why we want to get this bill, this alternative, into the narrative, because we believe that it will receive support. The RAC Act had a fairly good base of Republican support and some Democrats interested on the House side. So we'll have to work on some of the additional provisions that we put in. But I think I think that it's a good place to start that discussion with our colleagues on the other side. I'm going to do a windshield wiper here. Yes, ma'am.
Piggybacking on the last question that you were asked, so what is the next step from here? Because a lot of times bills do get introduced and they just lie there. So have you spoken to the leadership here in the Senate? Have you spoken to Democrats here in the Senate at any point? What would be the next step?
I have spoken with members in the Democratic Conference, and I have spoken with members in leadership, and a number of other members who are interested in the bill. So I think what's different about this bill, the president has made it very clear that President Obama's DACA, the administrative action, was an inappropriate way to deal with a problem that he wants solved. And so we have a clock ticking out there. And every day when these children that were covered under DACA wake up, I know they're worried about their certainty. And hopefully that pressure is going to pull forward this discussion and potentially get something that we can get to the House and ultimately to the president's desk.
Are you looking at any other particular bill? Because you're saying it's not a standalone, it would have to be included with something.
Yeah, I think
is there a specific bill that you might be looking
I think
at?
border security, a bill that I'm an original co-sponsor of, that I think has some of what has to enter into the discussion on border security from Senator Cornyn, is an important place to start. There are other bills out there and other proposals. What we're trying to do is be open to all ideas. On the one hand, it has to be a part of a broader bill, but it also can't get so unwieldy that it becomes comprehensive immigration reform, because we know how that movie ends. What we need is something that is dealing with the DACA population, is dealing with border security and other elements that we think are important. And a lot of that is in consultation with Homeland Security and people in the administration.
Just following up on that really quick, do you have a commitment from Leader McConnell to either take it up on the floor, or a commitment from Chairman Grassley to take it through the committee?
We've had productive discussions with Senator Grassley. We're going to continue to have discussions about the path that it would take through committee or to the floor. But those are ongoing because there's a lot of other things that we've got to try and get done this year too. We've got the year-end budget decision. We've got a number of other bills that will consume a lot of chamber time. So trying to figure out those mechanics we'll work on as the bill moves forward.
Senator, you talk about addressing visa overstays, and that's one of the key things in your bill. Could you expand on how you plan on doing that? The federal government always has a really hard time tracking those down anyway.
Well, first off, we've got to make it very clear that if someone, 30 to 40% of the illegally present population here came through visa overstay, not through a border crossing. So we're talking about provisions that will tighten up the visa program and not allow pursuit of any sort of citizenship for people who abuse the program or do not honor the spirit of it. And that's with travel visas, work visas, the full list. If you'd like some more specifics about the mechanics, we can cover that offline.
Last question. Senator Tillis, Senator Langford's office suggested one off-topic question, please, and it would be about the NFL and the president calling for a boycott of American companies. Could I have both your thoughts on that, please?
I'll take it if you want to take it as well.
I was about to say off topic.
Yeah, it is off topic, but let me say this. Obviously, individual Americans have the ability to be able to have free speech. Individuals can protest as they choose to, can have free speech as they choose to. Businesses can choose to be able to act and react on that. I do have an issue that I have to tell you. For whatever reason in America, if individual players kneel in protest at a football game, that's seen as free speech. We do have high school coaches that have kneeled in silent prayer and they've been fired. Now, the First Amendment's the First Amendment. It goes start to finish. We can't say to one football coach, you're fired if you kneel in silent prayer at the end of the game, but to a player, if you kneel in protest at a game, you're celebrated. We got to be able to determine where we are as Americans on that. If we're going to honor all free speech and all free exercise of religion, we need to be able to honor that universally.
I couldn't do any better than that. So thank you all for.
Can we talk about healthcare? If we're going to go off topic.
Well, Senator Hatch is gone. So thank you all for. I'm not on a committee of jurisdiction.
But I love your thoughts about the bill itself.
They be happy to speak with you all.
So some more comments, of course, on the hot topic of the day, the hashtag take a knee, and the President Trump and NFL seemingly clash really from over the weekend. That is what tons of people are discussing. And we're actually going to have our reporter Bob Barnard, he's going to sit next to me in a second, and talk about some of the people he caught up with this morning to kind of see the general sentiment around the district and what people are feeling about this topic. But meanwhile, guys, I want to take you over because we're kind of in this same vein, the same topic. Reverend Jesse Jackson right now is speaking. He's holding a press conference regarding President Trump's remarks and what he says. He's in Detroit, and what he says to end the name-calling and un-American attacks on the First Amendment and constitutionally protected protests. Let's see if we can jump in and catch some of this live over in Detroit.
Accepting electoral college as a fact when it's a Confederate fact, just like the statutes. They did not pursue each of states' rights to turn a national election in 2000. Should have done that. And this time around, you had the FBI involvement, the Russian involvement, increasingly Cleary was very involved, but no one took into account seriously voter suppression. That's the real narrative is the uncounted or miscounted black votes, black and brown votes. We want to search the country and find those votes.
Ms. Winfrey and Garrett, do you guys want to weigh in on that? Do you believe that there were votes in Wayne County that weren't counted, or Detroit?
What I was speaking to earlier, no, I don't. I think if anything needs to happen, it's legislative changes that have to happen. Because for individuals to say votes could not be recounted, it is because of legislation that prevents them from being recounted, such as seals broken and so on and so forth. So to answer your question, I do believe the votes were counted.
Properly?
Absolutely. Are there any other questions? Well, okay, so you're saying that you couldn't do a recount in Wayne, or are you talking about Macomb?
What I'm saying, and I'm sure Clerk Winfrey will agree, there's legislation that states when a seal is broken on a canister that you cannot recount that. So I think in some cases it's mistaken that we could not recount the votes. Well, it's the legislation that warranted that you could not recount them.
And how big of an issue was that in Detroit and Wayne? Well, the recount, as you know, was canceled. But there's speculation as to how many that there possibly could have been. And you can't operate, you shouldn't operate on speculation. But what you should do is get those facts out. And I believe that facts are purposely skewed. And in my opinion, that's a form of voter suppression. It's to keep you home. It's to make you think your vote won't count when actually your vote did count. And like Clerk Garrett said, it's a legislative issue in terms of recounts in the state of Michigan. And it's an issue that we're working with our legislators currently to ensure that legislation is passed to make our recount laws, election laws, more in line with the rest of the country.
There must be no basis for not counting or recounting when it is warranted question. In Florida, when Gore was on the upsurge about to win, they said we close the books in the state at 12 midnight. So uncounted votes in Florida, plus discounted votes, determined the winner in 2000. In 2006, you got cases of uncounted votes and seals and broken, not broken. These questions must be answered in the full light of that we want transparency on what happened to the votes in 2000. We know enough votes, but you win by 3 million and lose, something is wrong. Any other question about the cabinet situation?
My question was about the voter suppression
All
topic again, Reverend. You made a reference to Macomb County that you were going to do some investigating down there for voter suppression. What has led you to believe that
several states around, several counties around the state we're going to talk about? I haven't mentioned them because you have fewer voters in Macomb than you do in Wayne. and more in Wayne, and yet 20,000 people, I think it is. And yet the flipping, that flip, it brings that to our attention. But not being able to unseal the votes comes to our attention. And so there are a number of things involved in it. Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York only have one day to vote, technically, which is Tuesday. Illinois, we now have 2 or 3 weeks to vote, and now have automatic voter registration. We want Michigan's voter system to be brought up to date. Should have automatic voter registration in the state, at least 2 weeks out to vote, begin voting on that. Just one day voting, that's inherently suppressive. Too many things go wrong on one day in the first place. And so thank you very much, my friends. Unless you got another question. Don't want to cut you off. Don't want to suppress your question.
Blame it on me.
President Trump has framed any question about the election as Democrats being sore losers.
Well, he said a lot of things weren't true. That's another one of them. If he had won by 3 million votes, you wouldn't have heard the last of it. I think that we quit too quick.
Thank you.
Guys, we are back with Bob Barnard inside the newsroom.
Hey there.
Hey, Bob. How's your day been? So you had an interesting kind of story today. Obviously, we've been talking about the hot topic of the day, the Trump NFL kind of clashing over the weekend and everything that happened on Sunday. And so many things now, this is being taken to a big extreme. There's so many topics now conjoined with this one. It's sort of like, I don't know, as they were saying today in the morning show, it's just sort of so many things in one now. And you were out in D.C. today kind of getting some public opinion of this?
Yeah, we started out in Arlington, Virginia. We went to Bob and Edith's, which is a very popular diner
the
there
diner.
on Columbia Pike. We started there, spoke to some people there, and then we came into, there's a great little coffee shop. It's called the Lincoln Waffle Shop, right across from Ford's Theater.
Yeah,
and it's a great mix of locals and tourists. So you get a cross-section of our country there and our area in one place, and so we spent some time there as well.
And people were willing to speak about it? I mean, was this an
there were a lot
topic?
of people who didn't want to or spoke to us but didn't want to be on television speaking about it because it is very controversial. It's a very sensitive subject for a lot of people, whichever side you're on, whoever you're siding with. But then there were some people who did go on camera, and I think you have something queued up here.
Yeah, I do.
Was I found interesting because the wife had one opinion and the man had another. And they were from the state of Washington. I forget exactly where. I think from the Seattle area, but they said, we're from the other Washington.
Yeah.
But they were kind enough to speak to us having breakfast this morning, and she had one opinion and he had another. So if you want to share that, it kind of shows what we're
let's take a look
out there this
morning.
All right.
All the players standing there. And
we disagree, so.
What do you say?
I think they have every right to do that. I don't think the president should open his mouth and get into it. It's America. It's a free country.
Thank you. All right, but now we have another. What's your thought?
She says the right things, too. I served 20 years in the submarine Navy. I love my country, my flag, and I show the respect that I expect other people would do, too. Disrespecting the flag is not really saying anything to me except, get on with your program. That's not a place to say there's unequal justice, unequal society, behavior, whatever it is they're really protesting. It's not the place. They got a lot of money. They can be putting that money into a real national campaign if they want it. Don't disrespect my flag.
So he was saying like the athletes, the pro athletes, and you know it was fascinating. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Jim Brown, who was a legend NFL player, happened to be from my hometown in New York.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, and went on to Syracuse, played football there, went to the Cleveland Browns, set all the rushing records in the Hall of Fame and all that. He was critical of a couple of Cleveland Brown players, and he still kind of works with the team. I think he's kind of a community leader from Los Angeles, but he goes back to Cleveland for a lot of the home games and works with the players. And he was critical of a couple of the Cleveland Browns players who I think took a knee the first week, met with the team. The second week, they all stood. And what he had basically said was, you are very wealthy, you have a voice, by all means use your voice, but the game is not the place to do it. You know, you're being paid by an owner, you're here to perform, you're here to do your job, stand up, you know, be proud that, you know, you can do this job in this country, make great money, performing for the people in a business environment, and stand and don't protest this way on the field, in uniform, representing a team, in front of the people who are paying your salary, the fans and the TV audience. And they all heeded that. And he made a lot of sense. It was a very passionate argument on behalf of those who say, don't, like this gentleman, don't disrespect the flag. However, then the president made his comments in Alabama on Friday, and called some of these players SOBs for doing it, and that angered a lot of people who said, wait a minute, this is a free country. You can, whether we agree with you or not, and even if we disagree with you, you have a right to express your opinions. And if that's to take a knee or to whatever, not fully respect the flag, the national anthem, that is your right, even if we disagree with it. And so the president making his comments, calling some of those people who had done it before, including Colin Kaepernick, who was kind of the face of this issue, calling them SOBs, angered a lot of people. And so, wait a minute, if you see something wrong, you have a right to stand up and do something about it. Like Congressman John Lewis, who we interviewed up on Capitol Hill this morning, said the same thing. You know, if you see something wrong, you have a right in this country to say something, to do something about it. So a lot of players, coaches, owners, not a lot of them knelt down. Many of them stood arm in arm, like we saw Dan Snyder, the owner of the Washington Redskins, with some team players kind of making a statement. So it's interesting. Maybe this thing's going to blow over in a couple of days.
People are saying that, maybe a couple of weeks, let it go.
But you know, when the president, whether it's Donald Trump or whoever, gets out there and makes a comment that some would deem controversial, others applaud, it's still going to get the attention of a lot of people, as he does, whether it's in a speech or on social media. And that's what really fired up that reaction by the NFL yesterday. Was, I think, him singling out and saying the NFL should fire the players who are disrespecting the flag. And a lot of them are saying, we're not disrespecting the flags, we're just kind of doing our own, in a sense, silent protest, which some interpret as disrespecting the flag and not honoring our national anthem.
A lot of people are wondering if those comments from Trump on Friday exacerbated the whole situation.
Well, clearly did.
On Sunday, I watched a lot of football. It was...
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have had the display that we saw. The Pittsburgh Steelers,
None
all
but one,
staying in the locker room. The one was a veteran himself who stood out there in the tunnel. The reaction across the NFL would not have been as it was had he not said what he said on Friday night in Alabama. So that is what caused this, whether you condemn it or
either side of it,
applaud it. It was clearly the president's remarks last week.
Yeah, we brought this up earlier, guys. The Redskins obviously had a statement, but many teams are coming out with a statement from their owners or their top people, and they're all pretty well, worded, kind of in that neutral, kind of, I guess, stance of being unified as a team, and we're here to play the game, and it's interesting to see. I mean, Cardinals came out with one. Even
almost all of them. The Dolphins, the Jets.
I saw some. And then even interestingly too, I brought this up earlier with Ronica, for the Patriots, obviously Tom Brady being an outspoken Trump follower / supporter, actually said he disagreed with Trump's words on Friday.
Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots. Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and I think these are team sports, and so I think when the team front office hierarchy is realizing that there are a lot of our individual players who took this personally and are planning in some way or another to react to it, I think they felt, look, we are a team, and we want to, in at least this case, support those individual players who were affected by what the president said and may, in fact, do something. So let's do it as a team. Let's show some team unity, even though on a lot of the teams, I don't know that any coaches or owners took a knee, as some players did, but a lot of the team members stood arm in arm. Not disrespecting the national anthem or the flag, but just showing a sign of unity, while there were, I think, greater numbers of players who did take a knee. But the statements, like the Redskins statement, are meant to just kind of say, look, you know, we're a team sport, and if some of our members, whether it's by illness or other tragedy, are impacted, their lives, their emotions are impacted, we're gonna react as a team, and that's kind of what they've done here.
That's a really good synopsis of it too. And then interestingly also, I think the most sort of potent, I guess, tweet of President Trump's on this issue was this one, of course, trying to separate it from the racial equality that Colin Kaepernick really stood for. So I don't know, what say you on all this kind of now?
Again, another touchy subject that you know, in speaking to people today, a lot of those who didn't want to go on camera, saying that it is about race, because really, though the protests were about, initially by Colin Kaepernick and subsequently by others, were about some of the police shootings of African American, mostly men, I believe, in different communities around the country. The feeling like if you're a young African American man, you're guilty before you're proven,
targeted,
so that there was, you know, in some instances, police who were overreacting and killing unarmed black men in the community, and so that's what inspired Colin.
Initiated.
Right, just for him to say that, you know, I'm not disrespecting our military or the flag, but I'm going to take a knee because I want to do something, say something, express myself in some way about those things. The police, the very few but passionate and controversial police killings in certain neighborhoods, and then the others who followed Colin, primarily African American. So some people are saying, well, to say this is not a racial issue when the main people who are taking the knee, who according to the president are showing disrespect, are African American, that you can't say this isn't racial. But the president's saying it's not. I'm targeting the individuals, whether they're black or white or whatever, who are in his mind taking a knee and showing disrespect to our flag, to the national anthem, to our country. So
it's interesting. A lot of issues in one, right?
He's saying it has nothing to do with race, and others are saying, but the people you're singling out, calling SOBs, are primarily African American men.
Right. Good point.
So some people interpret that to be racial, and he's saying no, it's not.
And you wonder if it's going to spiral out of control, and people are going to be knowing even what they're doing. I know Holly was saying that this morning. Are people just kind of follow along, not really know what they're doing? I mean, possibly, or this brushes over in a couple weeks and we see the end of it. But the NFL season goes on and on, so it's
and I don't think it's trickled down into like college or high school sports.
Right,
I don't believe so.
Good point. It's in the
it'll be
professional
interesting
realm.
to see where this goes from here. But
I
mean, his statements Friday night and the reaction on Sunday, we'll see. I mean, there's so much going on in the world when you hear, you know, North Korea saying they're going to shoot down our bombers if they come in international water, because President Trump has, in their minds, the North Korean minds, declared war on North Korea. You've got the utter devastation in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands and whatever.
Mexico.
So there's so much going on in the world. By next Sunday, will this thing even be a news subject? Who knows? But I would imagine there will be individuals, and maybe more than there were last week and the weekend before this who will,
with them.
And again, take a knee or turn their backs or whatever. So, so I think it's going to be bigger than it had been. Whether it will be as big as it was this past weekend going forward.
And it's even interesting listening into some of the events of today. We just brought you former President Bill Clinton down in Arkansas, kind of hearing to see if he had anything to say. Reverend Jesse Jackson. Just in general, people are asking these questions. The White House press briefing, Sarah Sanders is bound to get multiple questions on this. Ronica prepared for that, of course. So this is definitely, I would say, the topic of the day that we're kind of chatting about.
Clearly. And again, even though there are these sad things going on in Puerto Rico,
right.
The alarming
Which are not
situation.
To be diminished, right?
No, and again, we spoke to Representative John Lewis, who was on Capitol Hill to speak about something else, and we asked him, and he was very passionate. So yeah, it's definitely top of mind, and it brings up more broad-based issues of the way there's violence in certain communities, the police-community relations, predominantly in African American communities, and then by some players taking a knee and the president getting involved, it's become bigger than it was, but maybe like anything, if you're getting people to talk about an issue that some people feel needs to be talked about, maybe it's not such a bad thing, even though the reactions to what the players and the teams have done vary from those who say, you know, way to go, to like, I'm no longer a fan of your team.
It's really interesting. I do wonder too if that one player from the Steelers, Villanueva or whatever, if he'll be tapped to like go on interviews and stuff. I'm curious.
Yeah, well, he's an Army veteran, and
I'm
you know,
sure.
And I would hope and I would imagine that the rest of the Steelers organization respected his right to want to say, hey, I agree with, you know, you guys want to express yourself in one way by staying in the locker room. I'm going to be out there, and so, you know, hats off for allowing people to express themselves, however, in a sense, however they really want to.
In other news, though, Sunday football was awesome this Sunday.
No, it
all
wasn't.
those games, Giants fan. I knew
No,
it.
it wasn't.
What a game! No, I wasn't setting him up.
Awful.
But it was a crazy day of
Who kicks a
NFL.
60, you know,
That
bravo
was
to the young man.
He's a Giants fan.
The
Eagles
rookie
Giants.
who kicked that 61-yard field goal with time running
and
out
his
to
parents.
win it.
I don't know if you later saw the
Yeah,
video.
they were up there, and he's crying, and she's so
It was
excited.
a crying moment, but a tough game for the Giants.
Awesome for them, but if you're a Giants fan, it was not a great Sunday.
And in general, the 1 p.m. games were insane. Almost all of them were tied or in overtime to the end.
There was controversial, you know, the Von Miller going to reach down to the Buffalo Bills quarterback to help him up and walking away. He got flagged for that. They ended up scoring a field goal on that drive with a 15-yard penalty.
Okay.
And Von Miller has said that, I cost my team the game, and I shouldn't have done it. It's a team sport. Odell Beckham Jr. in our game, catching a touchdown and pretending he was a dog, relieving himself in the goal in the end zone.
I didn't see
he
that.
Gets flagged and says, "I don't care. You know, this
free
is what
speech.
the fans want." And free speech, but it cost the team.
It did.
You're an individual, yes, and we love the touchdown, but the celebration
was it excessive
cost
celebration.
Us, yeah, and, you know. So anyway, and then there was, I think it was a Chicago Bears player who was running into the end zone, playing. I guess it was the Pittsburgh Steelers.
It was
and
Steelers.
at the end, sort of like one of those Leon Lett moves where he was celebrating before he got into the end zone, and the ball was knocked out of his hand, and it didn't cost him a touchdown or whatever. But it's like,
it was
get
close.
into the end zone, take care of the
Just
touchdown,
get in with the
tone
ball.
down the celebrations, just be grown-ups, you know.
Too funny.
Anyway, so yeah,
it was a crazy day. I saw
yeah,
the Lions had a touchdown, like retracted. There was a lot of craziness, but somehow.
And
what?
Not that I'm a big fan, but the Redskins winning on Sunday Night Football at home.
I didn't watch it.
Primetime TV, playing really well.
Yeah,
so
not what they
good
expected.
for Redskins Nation.
Definitely. So cool
Not good
football
for
talk.
the Giants fans.
I know, bummer. I didn't set you up. I promise,
yes, you
Bob.
did.
Thanks so much again for your analysis. This was great.
My pleasure.
Really interesting story, of course, guys. Bob's gonna roll out. Thanks. And this topic, of course, being one that we're going to hear about throughout the day, throughout the evening. If you guys are interested in the White House press briefing, I believe we're going to be taking that to our Facebook page. So we will continue with our coverage here on digital tomorrow, and then, of course, on air tonight on our broadcast. This is going to be a story that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be following it, of course, to see who else comes out with comments. Obviously, following the president's tweets, as we always have, and more. So some really cool insight, guys, from inside our newsroom today. Thanks for joining us. Jonathan, thanks for your comments on the stream. And you'll hear more from some of our reporters as we sort of track what's hot, what their stories are throughout the week. We'll keep you updated on weather and other happenings from our digital newsroom, guys. So for now, take care, and we'll see you tomorrow at 11:30 here on Fox 5 Live, guys.